part in with the mid-rim and everything. So this is where the storyline gets a little more decentralized because
Yeah.
we have every character going every which way. So we might try to tackle like as much of the next year in universe, trying to push it as quick as possible towards episode 3, because that's when all the fun stuff happens. But episode 3, I'm thinking could be for next time, because we have a lot of ideas with that. But the thing is, post episode 3 era, like we usually divided between the first 4 years of the Imperial period, or like the first 4 or 5 years or so, I should say. So like the first first 6 years we would probably be able to cover in one session, and then we just skip ahead to episode 4 or something, because why not? Or like the Kyle Katarn thing, and the lead up to episode 4 and episode 4 itself, and maybe the after effect, because the Battle of Yavin's fun. Sorry, the OT era is really, 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 really fun.
Yeah, it is.
Well, I think every Star Wars fan loves episode 4.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I don't know how many people would say it's their favorite, but I don't know. No one's going to say it. I think it's sort of rougher. It's like a little bit rough if you think about it as a movie, but it's amazing.
Well, when it comes to episode 4, though... Oh, we're recording?
Yep, I clicked record, sorry.
No, whoops, I didn't even notice.
I should have given you a heads up, but I felt like I didn't want to miss anything.
Oh, okay, no, I was just doing the recap to catch myself up mentally. All right, so yeah.
It's okay, we can always... I'm a whiz with the editing. I'll make you sound great no matter what.
Oh, cool. Well,
you don't need a lot of help. I'm not saying that you need help, but everyone can use my editing skills.
Like I have listened to some of the like listening to your stuff. You're much better at editing than I am.
Well, this one's going to be better audio quality. I had some issues.
That's cool.
With some of our recordings, I was trying out some different editing tools, and unfortunately, they didn't work out. But I think I have it locked in, so it should sound better for everyone.
Cool. Okay. Well, I'll be honest, my favorite Star Wars movie is probably episode 3.
Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah.
Why is that?
I will admit I like the fact that it's a Canadian who's Darth Vader, for one thing. Hayden Christensen.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's Canadian. For another thing, it's just, I find it's the most tightly written. And the fighting choreography is really good. The politics, I love the politics in the prequels. So it's all tightly woven together. In episode 3, I really like the unraveling and the sense of doom that approaches as you go along through the movie. How about you, Dan? Favorite Star Wars movie of the 6?
Episode 6. No, wait, 3. Episode 3.
Yeah, for him it's episode 3 as well. That was also the last one we saw with Dad.
Yeah.
In the theaters, that was a pretty awesome movie to see there. But the last movie we saw in theaters with him, I think, was Bourne Ultimatum. At least for me, I was alone with him. Now there was a great movie and a great way of ending a trilogy. Anyways, how about you, Chris? Favorite Star Wars movie?
Episode 5 for me. Still my favorite.
Okay, well, last time we left off, we had gotten to the Battle of the Mid-Rim, when the Republic and the CIS crashed into each other, so to speak. Now, I'm going to need to take this character by character, because otherwise I'm not even going to know where I am. So, one second. The thing is, we have... Let me actually reopen that list. I'm going to need to click on your account on Substack.
For sure. Go ahead.
And cripes, we need more subscribers for you. Please, people need to subscribe to you already. What's wrong with them?
I don't know. We're working on it, right?
Yeah. Alright, so, for the Republic forces, we have Talon and Alpha Squad. The thing with Talon, though, is he's going to be touring the mid-rim, really. He's actually undermining the CIS. His investigation into what happened, into Darth Tyrannus and Sifo Dyas gets derailed. This is where we wanted to show, as brilliant as he is as a detective, the thing is, Palpatine is still one step ahead of him. Palpatine, people forget, is very, very sneaky and clever in the prequel era. So, Talon completely forgets about his investigation for a year or so. A year and a half, actually, I think. Because he gets so caught up more into just Black Ops operations. So, the thing is, he's sent to the mid-rim. We were thinking, I think, to Melita Dawn, where Obi-Wan, at one point, turned away from the Jedi path as a Padawan. And where the idea would be for Talon to visit a place his dad had his first brush with death, really. So that Talon has to revisit that place. Although he doesn't know of its significance to his dad initially. And, there's that operation where a childhood friend of Obi-Wan's is the planetary governor. So there'd be this kind of contact with Obi-Wan's backstory. That was one idea we had, but the idea was that this would end in tragedy, as the guy would die. And Talon would, fail to save him. But we were thinking Talon and the squad had prioritized saving the man's family. And they had succeeded in this regard. So that they had a split-second decision and chose to save, wife and kids. Obi-Wan would, of course, be saddened when he'd hear of this buddy of his who died. But this is necessary for the Clone Wars because this is a very tragic era. This is not supposed to always be an era of victories and whatnot. Everything is supposed to be bittersweet. It's basically World War I. On the Republic side, Melira Stardust would end up battling along the mid-rim, I believe, near Mon Calamari. She would successfully lead a defense of the star system with her legion, headed by Commander Kraft, and Melira would combine the various talents of her crew, because she's someone who's a jack of all trades, but she's got some interesting people who form her crew, because her personal security is headed by a former Coruscant security guy who's a Keldor. Her, you've got the platoon commander of the squadron, I should say. The squadron commander is someone who would be nicknamed after Jaren Muln, the finest pilot in the galaxy, just because he's a remarkably talented clone pilot. But he's not force sensitive. He's called Muln. She's got Kraft. So she's got a pretty motley crew. But the problem with Melira is her Padawan has actually outshined her a little. Her Padawan kind of got an accidental kill on a Sith, and the problem is this puts a hit on his head, because, the other Sith are going to take a look at this and say, a 13-year-old killed one of us. We can't have that. No, wait, 14-year-old killed one of us. A 14-year-old killed one of us. We gotta kill him. It's about the family dignity and honor and whatnot. I say family more as a Godfather reference. Man. The Corleones. What a disaster. But the kid, Skyrim, ends up kind of needing protection. He does need his master's protection and whatnot, and even Yoda's a little worried about that, because talented kid, but, So the kid starts receiving instruction in the use of Magashi, because it's lightsaber wielders who are wanting to come after him. And Magashi, as everyone will recall, is good on lightsaber combat, because it's Dooku style. But the idea was that this is when the kid starts to exert his own will. He starts to realize, they're coming after me. So I gotta shift styles from Shicho to Magashi. And he has that same aggressive energy that Dooku had at that age. And that same pride. So you've kind of got a mirror image, but does have his discipline. He does have his feet on the ground and whatnot. But he ultimately, the idea was for him to be a gifted youngster, but ultimately he doesn't change the war at all. In any way, really, I think. But this is where Melira's role, this is where she wields the most influence. In some ways. She is meant to just train the next generation. Skyrim, of course, she starts teaching all the little tricks she knows, from piloting to medical training to teaching him to wield a lightsaber. She might be somewhat mediocre in the Force, but he's a little stronger. He's not Skywalker, though. Never will be. Mikran takes on her own Padawan. We didn't feel it important enough to give him a name, so he is a Padawan learner not appearing in this film, who bravely fought at the Battle of Doesn't Matter and defended the forces of Nobody Gives a Darn. So, yeah, couldn't resist that joke. Mikran, though, is, if people will recall, on the Outer Rim, currently kind of running with a hodgepodge crew, which have to kind of imitate Enzo and Andrea in the web. Basically, they just have to learn to adapt and survive on their own. But the problem is, what this breeds in this Legion, and especially the Legion commander, who's already had problems with his personality, is a independent will and stubbornness. Because it takes a lot of stubbornness to survive behind enemy lines like that. But they have no idea what's going on in the core. They got no idea. They fled into the Outer Rim. They're cut off. So they got to figure out how to refuel. They got to figure out, and they got to pick up what clone they run into one planet. They battle the CIS there. They then have to lay low. But if they find the remnants of another Legion, they basically just grab it and absorb it into themselves, because you got to survive. And the idea was they did run into 1% of what remained of another Legion. So they kind of devour it and move on. I don't want to say a parasite, but like a piranha. But the problem is they're incorporating within themselves another Legion, then another. And then they find, by lucky happenstance, or the Force, a commando squad that's behind enemy lines. So they pick it up. But the problem with this is that the 339th Legion soon becomes a bit of a rogue Legion. And that's kind of where the idea for the Legion came from. Because, you have Rogue Squadron, why not Rogue Legion? So they really do become fairly roguish. But they do adopt a very brutal mentality of, we can't be held down in sieges, we can't be, we can't be leaving any trail, so if we have to, we bombard crap. We fight like pirates. So they basically become a pirate legion in a way. But they soon realize and manage to track down, because Hale is a tech whiz. They figure out that the location of where Dooku's, one of his main radio jammers are. The thing is, Dooku was fond of jamming communication between the outer and the inner rim, because, you don't want the enemy having communication with each other and whatnot. You need to jam communications. So we kind of figured it'd probably be located in the mid-rim. This Legion decides on a suicide mission eventually, thinking, what the hell, we'll try it. And this would be about 9 months into the war. They just get the idea, screw it, we're dead anyways, because Dooku has realized they're there. And they had a run-in with Grievous. But this is where we didn't want to show Grievous as incompetent. Grievous kicked their rear. He nearly wiped out the Legion. So they fled, and they decided on a suicide bomb attack of sorts on a jamming station. But this is where they destroy it and then flee. Because Grievous had been the one protecting it, and he had gone out to chase them. So they went around. Well, basically, he went out to hunt them, found them, beat them. They then decided, well, if he's here and he's not with the tower, we can go after the tower. You know what I mean? We'll go there, knock it down, and hopefully we'll do something productive for the Republic. And then we'll move again if we survive. And they were lucky. But what they didn't realize was Grievous ended up getting distracted by another attack by the Republic, namely by Anakin Skywalker. So Anakin, though he didn't realize it, kind of came to their rescue. And at that point, the 339th would flee still further, but into the mid-rim. And Grievous would flee from Anakin, because Anakin was one of the few generals who could take him. But next time Grievous would be deployed, we were thinking he would corner someone like Fergus, who's one of our characters. Someone who dislikes Anakin, but who's friendly with Tahlon. But the thing is, the 339th would receive the distress signal, and that's when they'd return to Republic space. They would corner Grievous, who would then retreat with most of his legion of droids. Because our goal was not to showcase Grievous as incompetent, because that's something I didn't like in the 2008 cartoon. He's just a bumbling buffoon. Like, Goofy would be a better military commander. Gosh! Better go after General Kenobi over there! A yuck! Like, Goofy could probably lead a better army. Then again, Goofy could lead a better army than Ahsoka, Grievous, Asajj, and, I don't know, Yoda in that series. I'm not a fan of that series. I'm joking here. Don't take my words as word of God here. But our idea was Grievous, does beat up a few people. And the thing with this Legion that soon returns to Republic space like a year and a half into the war, because remember they went after the tower 9 months in, then they fled, and then it's about 7-8 months before they circle around and end up back in Republic space because they're busy running around like chickens with their heads chopped off, recouping and whatnot. But when they make it back, the problem is they're a hodgepodge of 4 or 5 different legions that were either smashed or left over and brought under the umbrella of the 339th. The problem with that is they developed their own individual chain of command, with the original 339th as the top brass, those commanders as the top brass, and the surviving commanders as just lesser commanders. So the thing is, and the reason this became this way was also because it's the 339th who had the Jedi general, but because she didn't see herself as very competent, she had given command over to. So this kind of gave him a lot of leverage over the other clones, and he was keen to use it because he has an ego. But she, on the other hand, develops quite the bond with her crew, because she becomes more a medic. She becomes more kind of a mom to them because she's not really in command in some ways, but she's allowed to sink into the role she feels more comfortable with, which is to say, I guess more a healer, more a medic, more a maternal figure. Because you got to bear in mind, she was basically a kindergarten teacher who didn't want to go to war, shoved into the war, and drafted. But the Jedi didn't have a choice. Like, they needed her. And, like, I'm not judging the Jedi. What choice did they have? But this Legion, when it makes it back to the Republic, finds, for one thing, the first 150 Grand Army of the Republic commands, which are, or orders, I should say, you guys will recognize probably Order 66 for one thing, were changed, I believe. And so, since the orders have been changed, this Legion's a little confused about things. Because, some of how Like, you might have Order 67 was different when they were sent out. So when they come home, they're a little confused about things. But the thing is, they will obey the orders because it's natural. And this is where, by then, Tahlon, who would have made brief contact with them, ends up checking in with them like, okay, so he gets to them before Tarkin does. He goes in and he talks to them and says, okay, so what's your orders? And he gets a list of all their orders. So the Order 66 he reads on his datapad is different from the one that's given the next day. Now, he's not thinking of his investigation. He is, but he isn't. He was thinking, well, every clone army is always very secretive these days about what certain orders. I believe it was Order 70-something, 6, and another. I don't consider most of the Karen Traviss novels canon because they get wonky with a lot of the lore. But when it comes to the Grand Army of the Republic orders, I do follow that. So we're going to follow that a little. Tahlon was given one set of orders, but then the minute, there was a change. And people get dodgy when he asks questions about certain orders. One of the orders was this, the entire Senate's to be slaughtered. Talon's naturally a little concerned about that one. That one was the one that tipped him off, and he said, what the hell are we doing with an order to say slaughter the whole Senate? Then they say, you're not supposed to know about that. What the hell? So he's a little more concerned about that, but then he goes, you blanked out. We have an Order 65 and an Order 67. What's 66? Sir, what are you talking about? There's no Order 66. Yeah, but there's an Order 65 and there's an Order 67. And the Jedi did ask in the novels, like, what the hell's going on here? Why is there no 66? We jumped over one. What's going on with that? So this is something that there were Jedi who asked questions, but it's just they didn't get an answer. And they couldn't sense too often when the clones were lying. The clones were generally pretty good at it. And were able to fool the Jedi who trusted them. So this is where Tahlon does believe the Legion. He's just basically doing his job. And comes home, returns the next day, and he's told, you're not to know about 66. Basically. Like, one day, it was one thing, then he comes back the next day, and this is where his investigation starts anew, because he goes, how come that order was blanked out? It wasn't blanked out yesterday, but it is now. And, you have this Legion who just... But this is where we were thinking Hale ends up answering him differently from other clones. He says, where other clones say there is no Order 66, he says, sir, I have my orders. And that's where Tahlon asks him, well, who gave them? Because the highest chain of command is Yoda. I have my orders. Stop asking questions. So Hale's a little more direct and different, because he thinks differently. He spent a year and a half as a pirate. So... And Hale's also a little more uncomfortable because, he spent time in a different environment from other clones. And so Tahlon starts to sense there's something off here. He doesn't know who did this. He doesn't suspect Palpatine. He doesn't. He's just like, okay, this is weird. So he starts asking questions.
So what's he thinking when he's... I want to hear a little more what's he thinking about the... slaughter the Senate order. That would be pretty alarming.
That's what we were thinking was what frightened him. He was like, hold up. That's what had him questioning, why is there an order to slaughter the Senate? Who gave that order? Like, who changed? I think it was like 43 or 73 or something, and he's like, time out. You are not telling me there's an order to... a special command given that should the Senate misbehave, we slaughter the Senate. You are not telling me that's a thing. And he reacted with horror and disgust. And the clones would usually say, well, it's just a way, this comes from the highest chain of command. And Tahlon would then say, well, Yoda would never do that. Like, him and Yoda may be knocking heads, but he's like, Yoda would never give that order. This comes from the highest chain of command. So for almost a year, he's just hearing, this comes from the highest chain of command. Because the first few months had one set of orders, then they changed them. So, for the first few months, he doesn't question it. But then afterwards, if he says, do execute this order, he finds out it's a different set of orders. And he says, all right, just give me them to the clone commandos. He's like, just give me the orders you have. They do. 66 is blacked out, but he notices the one to kill the Senate. Tahlon doesn't focus on 66. He's focused on kill the Senate. He naturally gets angry with his commando squad and says, what the hell, man? We're not killing the Senate. And we were thinking the commando unit plays it off as a laugh. Like, Nate just says, well, come on, have you seen how they manage things? Wouldn't you want to slaughter them? Like, I mean, come on, when it's election time, we all want to do that. But Tahlon kind of sees that as, yeah, okay, but this is an actual command. Like, okay, I'm ordering you to scratch this one out. No, you can't do that. Well, why not? Well, it comes from the highest chain of command. Listen, I'm telling you, I am Yoda's representative. Yoda would never order that. Then he checks in with Yoda later and goes, did you issue this command? And Yoda will naturally go, I would never. Yoda's horrified. He's like, I can't explain it. I've never heard of this. So this is where we were thinking Talon's more focused on that. And he's like, so wait, at 339th, when they come home, they probably have the orders from before the 6-month change, because it changed around 6 months into the war. So he goes in to investigate and ask them about the Senate kill. And he's like, is this part of the original set of commands? On the first day, when they're just docking in the Republic space, they say, no, we don't have any such orders. That's weird. What are you doing? The next day, they say, yeah, that's an order. It comes from the highest chain of command. But then, he goes, okay, all right, so of the commands, there's 66 is blacked out, and that's where he gets the brusque, you're not at liberty to know about that. Comes from the highest chain of command. That's what has him going. No, like 66 is this order. Like, it's like, just go pick up bunny rabbits. He's like, what's with... I'm not well, it just says on my datapad this. Yes, it does. Well, that was weird. But he's like, okay, yesterday you didn't have kill the Senate, but now you do have kill the Senate. Something changed in 24 hours. Can I see who visited you? And this is where we were thinking Tahlon gets a little tipped off, because he gets a tip in a way, because the 339th just tell him, well, we're not actually allowed to tell you who visited us or who contacted us in those 24 hours. So Tahlon kind of goes, okay. Then goes to the docking manager. To the ship dockyard, where the Legion stationed itself. Now, this is where this would usually be civilian staff. And civilian staff will just say, well, here's the list of ships that docked. And that's where Tarkin's name comes up. Tarkin was a very corrupt man in the Clone Wars, who hated the Jedi. He had an uncanny hatred for them. But this is where this shows up in the Boba Fett novel, which takes place a month before Episode 3. Tahlon just knows Tarkin as a political figure and as a prefect of Coruscant. So he's naturally confused and flabbergasted as to, how can Tarkin be considered higher command than me? So he stops by for a visit. And Tarkin just says, you don't know a damn thing. I don't have to tell you anything. And that's where Tahlon just kind of picks up on little details and goes, you're lying to me. You know more than you're letting on. Okay, who issued the command? The highest chain of command is supposed to be the Jedi Council, Yoda. But you don't like the Jedi. And the Senate's not decisive enough to do this. So that's where Tahlon starts to suspect the Chancellor just being slightly involved, but he's not sure how. He's still thinking about Sidious. Tarkin's just thinking, I gotta get rid of this Jedi, because Tarkin got nervous when Jedi asked too many questions in the Clone Wars, because he knew from the beginning what Sidious had in mind. But the thing is, Tahlon does not get confirmation. And Talon's thinking, I need evidence. That the Jedi were always bound by evidence. They knew Palpatine was up to something in the actual canon. But Tahlon has no evidence. Like all Jedi, he says, I need proof. But you're never going to find proof. So this is where Tahlon starts his investigation over again. From the very beginning, into Tyrannus and Sifo-Dyas. Doesn't find much. So from there, he gets the idea, what if, I investigate odd incidences around the time of Sifo-Dyas and Tyrannus? Well, this leads him to the Naboo incident, which was an odd occasion. And at this point, he decides, all right, well, I'll investigate Padme Amidala. Because he's like, well, there were a lot of odd situations around her right before in the events of Attack of the Clones. So Tahlon starts to suspect her of something. So he starts investigating her, doesn't find anything odd in her family background. But this is where because you had Darth Maul. That's why he's investigating Naboo. Because, it's like, you have Maul, you have Padme, you've got Qui-Gon's death. This is all getting very odd for him. But he does happen upon one detail. Palpatine disappeared for a number of years from Naboo and then came back to Naboo in universe. And that's where Tahlon then says, that's a little weird. He must have gone off to study in school. Which school? Don't know. Well, there's records he studied over on, on the homeworld of the moons. That is to say, the race of... Well, I believe that'd be the race of Darth Plagueis. So he goes to check out there. No, it's all a facade. So he starts to get a little suspicious of Palpatine. But by then, it's about 8 months before the end of the war. Time is running out. And Tahlon doesn't even realize it. But he's getting more and more suspicious. He's a little confused because he's like, I can't find anything on this damn Zabrak, and I can't find anything on Palpatine. But Palpatine begins his career, sometime before Episode 1. So, on Naboo. Goes back to Naboo to investigate for backers, for supporters, and whatnot. And this is when Palpatine clues in that... And Palpatine arranges for an assassination attempt on Tahlon. Because he realizes this Kenobi is investigating my background. I can't have that. Because around this time, he has Valorum killed. And Valorum had spent the intervening years between Episode 1 and this era investigating Palpatine. And he found out Palpatine was corrupt. All of Palpatine's political enemies died. But Valorum conveys this information to Bail Organa. And Bail Organa keeps it to himself because he's scared. And Palpatine does not know Bail Organa knows. But Tahlon starts looking into these sort of things. And like Valorum, starts to realize every political enemy Palpatine ever had died under mysterious circumstances. The thing is, Palpatine was remarkably sloppy on that front. And this is where poking your nose a little further in tends to yield too many results. Now, by this time,
I had something I wanted to ask you about, or just a suggestion maybe. So when you start to when he starts investigating Padme, I was thinking, what if he found out that she was spending time with Anakin?
I was thinking he already knew it.
You already knew it.
Because Anakin and Padme were not very good at hiding it.
Okay, but here's what I was thinking is that if there was a way that he noticed that it was happening more, I don't know, I'm just thinking it could be interesting that he might suspect Anakin of wrongdoing, but for the wrong reason. You know what I mean? Because if he was seeing what Padme was up to, that she's spending time with Anakin, and that Anakin is getting closer to the Chancellor, so he could connect the dots there, but for the wrong reasons. And when you're trying to do something like connect the dots, that requires some analytical skill, some investigation ability, which we know Jedi are very skilled at. which through their use of the Force. But when you are a non-Force user, you might have to resort to other things to boost your mental abilities. They can use technology, they can use cybernetics, they can use other enhancers, they can even use stimulants, which we know about in Star Wars. We human beings, we here on Earth like to use stimulants like coffee. I know I do. And honestly, it got to the point where I was thinking I might need to cut back on my coffee. And I started looking for alternatives or things that could enhance my mental performance. So I started using a mental performance shot called Magic Mind, which I take around the time that I drink my coffee, and it has matcha in it, so it extends the usefulness and the efficacy of your coffee throughout the day. It makes the caffeine work better, so you don't have to keep drinking coffee all day long, which can increase anxiety. It can increase stress when you start to drink coffee too much, and it can mess with your sleep. So doing something like drinking this Magic Mind shot, which I've been consuming pretty consistently, which does help if you do use it on a consistent basis. It does help. And the benefits compound over time. And what are those benefits? Well, mental cognition, energy throughout the day, brightens your mood. I like to drink it with a smoothie sometimes. So it actually tastes really good. But other than tasting good, it also has a lot of great ingredients. So they have it contains lion's mane mushroom, chlorophyll, matcha, B vitamins, which are great for working out, just great for you to get in general, great for your muscles, L-theanine and turmeric, and all those things are really essential for people that need to be productive. So if you feel like you might be someone like that, someone that needs a little bit of extra help in your day, you can get 20% off by going to magicmind.com/SWLC and using the promo code SWLC20 at checkout. And you can get that discount on a subscription or even just a one-time purchase. So I totally recommend that you guys do it. I've been enjoying it, and I think you guys will too.
We were thinking he was blind, willfully, because he loves and reveres Anakin. He hero worships him. Mm-hmm. So the possibility that Anakin can turn, he doesn't believe in. But he believes Padme might be working with the Sith to turn Anakin. So, he doesn't want to believe that, Anakin might be the go-between or something. He refuses to believe it. That'd be the most natural conclusion, but he doesn't want to believe it. Because Anakin could never do that. Anakin's, the sun shines out of Anakin's rear end. To Talon's mind, no one's purer than Anakin. Anakin will never turn. Anakin's innocent. This might be an attempt against Anakin. But the problem with that is, it makes his thinking faulty. And it clouds his thinking.
It'd be interesting to see that if he did go down the trail, but convinced himself that it was nothing. Because if he was seeing that Padme and Anakin spending time together, I don't know, because what I'm trying to understand is what is he trying to investigate? And you said that he found a little about
trying to investigate
her family history or her family background, but that's not really. I mean, I'm not sure how that's going to lead to.
He's trying to find the Sith, Darth Sidious. Okay, but the problem is that was our mistake in not spending on that detail. But as for Padme and Anakin, many Jedi knew, but we were thinking this is where we'll scale it back to the personal in the first year. Talon bonded with his clone commando squad, who would sometimes come to Coruscant and be stationed in the barracks there. But to cover up for Anakin, Talon would sneak out at night and drag the clones to a strip bar in order to pretend, well, see, Anakin was with me the entire night. You stink of perfume and shit. Yeah, Anakin came to fetch me, but really, Talon's kind of covering for him. Obi-Wan Obi-Wan never went to strip bars, but Obi-Wan covered for Anakin for months on end.
So if anything, it could be that if he did start, so he starts, and I'm sorry, I'm trying to, the Padme thing seemed like kind of a throwaway for me, so that's why I'm trying to extrapolate it. And so one thing I'm thinking is not that he would suspect Anakin, but that if he were to invest Padme, shouldn't he feel some sense of guilt because he feels so attached to Anakin that even in
Well,
investigating
that's what
her.
Thinking there's
Yeah.
a measure of dislike between the two.
Okay.
Because Padme did not like Obi-Wan. She did not like any of Anakin's friends. But we were thinking Tahlon has a similar envious side. To him, Anakin's perfect. This is proof Anakin isn't. So there's a bit of spite between the two. So he's investigating her out of spite, in a way. Yeah, that's what we're thinking. Like, there's a dislike between the two. But the thing is,
I'm curious is if anything did come to his mind. So you think so? Okay, sorry, I keep interrupting you, but
no, dude.
I'm just like wondering if, as a result of investigating her, what's the conclusion? Essentially, he finds nothing.
He finds nothing about her.
Okay,
Nothing's out of order for Padme. All he does is prove how innocent and good a person she is. And
yeah, so he's like, yada, yada, yada. I mean, he's like, if I had any dirt on her, it would be that I know that she's with Anakin, but that's not relevant to what I'm looking into.
yeah, and he's like, well, damn, she's innocent.
Okay.
And he's like, well...
And she is, but it's sort of part of Sidious's plot that they're together, so...
Yeah. But Tahlon doesn't clue into that. He's like...
He doesn't clue into that, of course.
No, not at all.
That wouldn't really... he can't, obviously, but...
No.
I guess I'm just like... I'm wishing that he's colliding with some of the machinations in certain spots and doesn't realize it, but that's sort of what you know what I mean?
He's completely off the trail when he goes after Padme. And he kind of accidentally ends up stumbling upon the thread of Palpatine spent a lot of years abroad. No one knows where. Then he just kind of looks into that a little, not thinking anything of it, because a lot of senators do that. But he doesn't find... Like, he finds the man disappeared as a child, or at least as a young man. No, he disappeared as a young man. The entire Palpatine family was slaughtered. The only survivor was Palpatine, but he disappeared for 12, 15 years. And then crops back up on Naboo to propose himself as the senator of Naboo. Talon's reaction to that information is, what the hell? Where did he get the money to finance a political career? And how did he convince the elected king of Naboo to nominate him? This doesn't add up. They don't have a relationship. This guy came out of nowhere. And that's when Tahlon starts to go, there's something that doesn't make any sense here. And he starts to realize there's something off about Palpatine. But there's an assassination attempt placed on him with the likes of Asajj and a few other Sith sent out to kill him. And this is where our idea was, at that point, there's a former Mandalorian who worked with the CIS who decides to switch sides at this exact moment. Because the thing is, the assassination attempt does include General Grievous, and Grievous does overpower Tahlon and nearly get the better of him. Tahlon does make a point of trying to swipe back his master's former lightsaber. But ultimately, Tahlon is rescued by Mandalorian. The only reason Talanis Salazzar, the Mandalorian in question, switches sides is because at the beginning of the war, she had a command. But as the war has progressed, she's kept her eye out for info. Because, she knows Tyrannus is Dooku. This is an important info. And, she's paid attention, and she's kept track of some of the goings-on. But ultimately, she fails on a mission, and she ends up basically pitted against Anakin, and she barely survives. But her mentality was, she's a little angry about this. She kind of has the mentality, you sent me out there you didn't tell me Skywalker was there. No, I'm not going up against Anakin Skywalker. He could kill me. I'm not stupid. But she was sent in without the knowledge of Skywalker when she was told we have good intel on which legion it is. And she said, you had good intel, but you didn't tell me it was Skywalker. But the difference is, she knows Sidious exists, and she knows Sidious has been feeding info to Dooku. Now, what makes her feel uneasy is, I was sent to Skywalker, because she is a Jedi killer, And this is part of Palpatine's consistent plan to send Jedi killers to go after Anakin. Because he's training Anakin. Talanis was no match. She's a very talented Mandalorian, but she's no match against Anakin. She knows it. So this is about the halfway point in the war. And she kind of goes... She starts to decide to gather evidence as she's going on and tries to investigate from the CIS angle because she wants to gather dirt so that if she wants to switch sides, she can get in with the Jedi. Because she doesn't, she confronts Dooku like, you sent me against Skywalker. I don't feel comfortable fighting him.
Mm-hmm.
Are you a coward? Now, cowardice is not something I tolerate. Dooku's ready to... She says, okay, I'll fight. I'll do whatever you tell me. Like, I'm not a coward. But she's like, okay, I can't fight Dooku. He could kill me in a heartbeat. But what I need to do is, she thinks like Dinobot from Beast Wars. I need to decide when I'm going to betray at the key moment. Like the opportune moment. And much as she doesn't like Tahlon Kenobi, because they've had their run-ins in the war, she's like, he has a brain. I might be able to use him. So she has the mentality, I don't know who's under that hood. But I have recordings I've stolen. And this is where she jumps ship. And she hijacks the assassination attempt on Tahlon in order to rescue Tahlon from it. And this is where Palpatine's plan falls apart with regards to Tahlon. Tahlon is not thinking Sidious equals Palpatine. Because he's just thinking there's just something odd about this man. Like, his political career makes no sense. But he's not cluing in, because, not many... Like, here's the thing, Mace Windu at one point was on a similar track, and didn't clue in immediately. But is basically forced to rely on this Mandalorian to survive. And, this is where we had the joke. We plan to write this in greater detail, but where he's basically her prisoner. And where you have the Jedi who when they get back in contact with them, say, so you've taken this Mandalorian prisoner, have you? Well, more like she took me prisoner, but let's not get into that. And you have the Jedi going, what? But, okay, you've stolen a CIS ship, but you're sending a Republican signal. Yes? Yes. She has you as her prisoner. Yes. And you're wanting to land. Yes. And she's not going to open fire or do something crazy. I don't think so. Don't think so, or so. He's busy glancing at her and going, Stripes, I don't know. She's crazy. She's a Mandalorian. And you have him. You know how all those Mandos are. They're all nuts, and starts whining and complaining like a Kenobi does. At which point we had the mentality, it'd be funny if the clone is listening and just shuts off the communication for a minute. We'll give him another 5 minutes, and when he stops whining, we'll flick it back. We'll unmute him. At which point they unmute him, and you have Tahlon basically finally finishing his complaining. And you have the clone. All right, that's very nice. Now, would you like to land? Yes, sir. We were thinking the Jedi would also... The Jedi commander would be someone like Lumia, and... Not Lumia. Barasoth, Thieves Master. Luminara. And Luminara would be like, okay, are you finally done complaining? Because she doesn't have any patience for that Kenobi whininess. And you'd have Tahlon starts complaining, and you have... We were thinking Talanis, the Mandalorian, would just say, okay, just shut up and land. Well, excuse me. The thing is... We got to bear in mind, the idea was a Sherlock, but he has the whininess of Obi-Wan. So, never shuts up. But the thing is, Tahlon, by this time, has lost his squad. Which, he has 2 members of his squad left, and they're relocated into an active legion as regular troopers. Because they're... you only have half a squad. You gotta make use of them, and you can't exactly fold them into another squad because there's no squad on hand to fold them into. So we'll just chuck them into a regular legion. It's either that or we put them aside and wait for later. We'll just chuck them into a Legion. So that was Nate and Zuko, the weapons and explosives experts who survived the assassination attempt. They're just folded into a Legion and redeployed elsewhere. And I'll be honest, we didn't really think about what they'd be doing for the rest of the war. They're just redeployed elsewhere. Tahlon kind of loses track of them because, we were thinking the three men are kind of lost in grief, because Quinns and Wyatt died in the field of battle. And there would have been some attachment, and the mentality was, at this point, Tahlon, who tended to go from Legion to Legion, and generally spent more time with the clones than other Jedi, is someone who would have developed a bond with some of the clones than, like I said, a lot of other Jedi. But in particular, he was attached to his squad. So, the loss affects him gravely, and that's where, on the other hand, we're thinking that because he'd go out drinking with some of the clones and, over the past 2 years almost, would have, introduced them to bars, to brothels, because he thought, it's a good cover, because, Anakin's coming to fetch me and keep me out of trouble and whatnot. Sure, he develops a nasty reputation himself, but, it's for Annie. But the trouble is, we're thinking Quinns had, for example, developed a bit of a bond with one dancing girl. But the dancing girl in question was one who Tahlon took an interest in more as a wait. She's the biological half-sister of Fergus, his friend. Because Fergus was given over to the Order, but his family fell on hard times. So his sister turned to prostitution to care for their dad. And that's where Tahlon found her as a dancing girl, sometime in the first year of the Clone Wars. But the thing is, Tahlon took it upon himself to try to persuade her to go down a different path, because, this is your friend's sister, so you don't want her whoring her brains out. To be uncouth. But we were thinking Quinns kind of fell in love with her. Because, the first woman he got with, really, because he decided to buy the other clones bought him a night with her. But the thing is, there would have been the classic thing of her moving away from prostitution. But she's still bitter against her half-brother, whom she blames for everything that went wrong in her life. So she's a bitter young woman, but she fell in love with this clone. But ultimately, Fergus, for his part, had, just to get into him very briefly, he had excelled throughout the war, saved many lives as a Jedi commander in general, and the trouble was he was haunted by a premonition after the first few months of the war. Fergus came to believe, because he had a premonition, that he would die at the end of this war. At first, what do you do with the foreknowledge? You are doomed. He doesn't know the Jedi Order is doomed, he just thinks, I'm going to die, I'm not going to survive this. So, he, like we talked about last time, he has this premonition, this knowledge. But as the war progresses, he loses one Padawan learner of his. He buries his adoptive son. So, Fergus is someone who, thought, I'll be outlived by my Padawan. No. And this is where he takes on the Padawan of another Jedi as his learner. And, because the other Jedi Knight died. This was sometimes a practice in the Jedi Order. But this is ultimately someone who tries to teach his apprentice, because, he wants a legacy, the value of healing and forgiveness. Because Fergus is a man who could never forgive himself or his master for the pain that was inflicted upon him, the abuse he suffered, and he can't forgive himself the slightest mistake. But he doesn't want his Padawan to follow in those footsteps. He wants his Padawan to be a better man than him. So ultimately, he's more interested in what his Padawan... We decided to just name him Bob, more as a nod to Bob from Reboot, but we figured, if there's names like Luke, why not Robert? But ultimately, his Padawan will outlive him, the second one, but the two of them would have a semi-joking relationship where in the last year of the war, Fergus starts to, this is the most wound up guy, like Scott Summers, Stern Brightblade. He starts to relax. But that's just like his character, where he's fighting in this war. In the first year and a half or so, he thinks, I'm going to die. Every mission could be my last. I'm going to die. I will die at the end of this war. I am not going to survive this. And ultimately, the thing is, at first, this frightens him deep down, but the idea was to have a bit of, the melting the Ice Queen, except it's an Ice King who melts a little and becomes warmer. But the inciting event for what starts to change him is also his sister railing when he's introduced to her by Tahlon, partway through the war. The two of them, like his sister tears into him. It's all your fault. My life sucks. I've had to become a prostitute. It's all your fault. You got the blessed life of a Jedi. I had to sleep around and, to take care of Dad. Do you even remember him? And Fergus doesn't. So, she's like, well, it's all your fault. How come you got the lucky life and I didn't? And this kind of wounds him, but he starts to ponder about it and go, have I lived a blessed life? Remember, he was physically beaten by his master as a kid. So he's like, yeah, to you, it seems like I was spoiled. But you weren't beaten as a kid, but you were poured off. So, this starts to make him question, have I been living in a spoiled manner? Am I spoiled when I hate, or at least dislike, Anakin Skywalker? And he starts to question and decide, I want to be a better person. I want to be, when I die, I'd like people to actually care. How do I do that? How do I get people to care about me or like me? Nobody likes me. And, then he starts wondering about that. Really, there are people who love him. It's just he doesn't think they do. But as that last year of the war is going to progress, he starts to change and become warmer. And that's what we're thinking for him. You could say, if you want, you think he might be a boring character. But the idea is he starts trying to embody the kind of honor and dignity of a Jedi Yoda wanted him to. And Yoda is really the one he turns to with these questions, because Yoda's his hero. And Yoda starts to guide him down a better path. That's another angle we wanted to touch on. Because in a lot of my essays, I rail too hard on Yoda, I think. And we wanted to show, as much as Yoda has his flaws, this is a guy who's grandpa. This is a grandkid who has PTSD. I need to help him heal. I need to help him out. So that's where Fergus is going as a character. Malira, to jump back on her, would end up, we were thinking, briefly captured by Malignus when she tries to liberate Naboo in a failed operation early in the war. She utterly, face plants and is defeated. Her legion is pushed back, they flee, and they join under Anakin Skywalker's command about a few months into the war. And it's important because Naboo has to be liberated under Republic command by, I think, around month number 7 of the war. So I believe that sometime month number 6 or 7 in the war. It has to be. Because 6 months into the Clone Wars, silly Tachi dies. But at that point, Naboo is firmly in the Republic's sphere. So Malignus's control over Naboo must stop at that time. But we figured, why not have an initial attempt by the Republic? Malira's given the command because she did well so far. She's a good officer. She has a good legion. She's got a good motley crew of buddies with her. And she's soon joined by Millennia Farland, who's one of the few senators going to the front line and acting like a general. So, you have her in command of a few legions, going in, failing. But she's captured, worst of all. So now this becomes not just an operation to liberate Naboo, but an operation to rescue a Jedi Knight. So this is where Malignus kind of has to, realizing, yes, I captured a Jedi. Crap, I captured a Jedi. Kind of phones in for intel. Like, he's like, okay, good news, bad news. I beat the Republic Army. I have a Jedi. Like, what do I do? And naturally they're saying, you're an idiot. Why haven't you executed her? Like, come on, she's a Jedi. You have her captured. Yeah, but I beat her. And I knocked her... Well, she was knocked out and I captured her. The thing is, I can use her as a hostage, maybe. But the Jedi aren't going to take it well. They're going to try to mount a rescue operation. Yeah, well, just kill her. Yeah, but... So Malignus's honor... His Dinobot-like honor starts to kick in. He's like... Yeah... But shouldn't I put a lightsaber in her hand and let her fight in self-defense? And, like, if it was Twitter, you'd have Palpatine saying, well, that's kind of gay. I'm joking. I have to crack a joke about the two, I don't know, what sides over on Twitter and whatnot. Well, that's kind of gay. You want to actually give her a fighting chance. But Malira uses the opportunity to realize, my enemy is a Sith Knight, and identifies himself as such. He doesn't call himself a Sith Lord, but a Sith Knight. He believes in honor. He spared me. This might be a means of getting info. I can use this. But that's where we're thinking she starts to have a dialogue with him, trying to persuade him to turn away from the dark side. Malignus doesn't like this, but he can't just kill her because of his honor. And so he's kind of caught in a trap of his own making. He has her as a hostage. But the thing is, Dooku and Palpatine just see it as, just kill her. We're not going to take her on as a hostage. You have to execute her yourself. He can't, because that violates his sense of morality. So he's of the dark side, but he's not very deep into it. So this is where Malira, though, starts to plant the seeds. And Malignus, when Naboo starts to... Well, his defense of Naboo, or of his command of Naboo, falls apart. He flees. But this is where we're thinking Malira decides to launch her own operation after him. And this is where we're thinking, her thinking is just, like, she tells the Republic, he's a dangerous commander who has defeated Skywalker, Yoda, myself. Like, this is a very competent guy. Send me to deal with him. And they do. But her thinking is, I would like to talk to him again. Not, I'm going to kill him. It's, I want to talk to him again. Because he spared me. And this is where we're thinking she does track him down. But where she would end up reaching him and he'd start to turn. But the problem is, Palpatine's not stupid. He sees what's going on and sends someone to kill him. Because, you can't have someone with that kind of intel turning. But this is where we were thinking he survives, barely. But Malira decides to hide him away from the galaxy for the moment. Because she sees it as, I don't want him to die. There's a whole love bullshit. Because they're stupid. But I'm joking. But we're thinking, Malira knows she's from Tatooine. A lot of Jedi knows they know where they're from. So she has him, once she's confirmed he's of the light, she convinces him to flee to a place like that, to lay low. He, on the other hand, doesn't stay there for long, and soon moves from there to elsewhere. And Malira, for her part, ends up bogged down with an operation command where basically a supply base on a jungle planet. Because she disobeyed orders. She went after him, seemingly killed him, according to her. But the thing is, she did a Qui-Gon Jinn, well, I shouldn't say Qui-Gon Jinn, but an Anakin Skywalker, actually. Anakin was more prone to this. She basically defied orders and went off on her own to go after a Sith Lord, which could have gotten her killed. So she's punished. You're getting the most boring job imaginable. You're stuck on a supply depot. You're going to oversee your legion. You're not moving. It's a secret supply base. You're stuck. Don't you dare move. And if you move, we'll court-martial you. So she's stuck for the next year and a half, doing nothing. During that time, well, it's actually, we were thinking, I think, Duxon as a location. That there'd be a secret supply base on Duxon, the moon of Onderon. I believe you know it because of Qatar 2, probably. Right, Chris?
I recognize that name. It's sort of a deep cut. I'm trying to think how it's spelled. Duxon.
Yeah, Dxun.
There you go. Yep. One of the moons of Onderon.
Yeah, we were thinking she might be stationed there. There's a small supply base that's hidden, just in case. Because, Onderon is so important, and the royal family is probably the strongest Force-sensitive people. So the Jedi would want them protected. But you can't just supply a public protection unit. That'll attract attention. Dooku will say, I see what you're doing there. I'm going to go send some people there. But instead, you put someone in secret there. But Onderon's also a very important space sector because it's a traffic lane. You know what I mean? Like, everybody, there's a lot of space lanes that go by there. This is just a secret supply base. Malira did not want the command, but she's given the command. She's grounded because she went after a Sith without permission. She wasn't supposed to. Now, the Sith in question is not in contact with the CIS anymore. But this is where we were thinking, Malira makes a startling discovery while she's on Duxon. She's pregnant, and she has the kids, and the problem is she doesn't know what to do with them. Because we're thinking it's a twin set of boys. Her problem is, doesn't know what to do with them, can't just hand them to the Jedi. The Jedi aren't stupid. So she hands them to the father. They're handed to their father, who by this time is going by his actual name. That's where we're thinking of naming him after the male variant of Valeria from Conan, Valerian. Basically because it means valor. So he goes from being malignant to valorous. I don't know what you think of that. It's just names, I think, in stories mean something.
Mm-hmm.
But Valerian Ackland, because he was from Saurus, where there are Acklays. So his family was the tribe of the Acklays, or Ackland. He takes his kids, dumps them on Tatooine with Malira's family, with her dad. Because where can you hide them away from the galaxy? Why not on Tatooine? But they will not be growing up with Luke. Don't worry, we're not interfering with that part of the canon. That's just a temporary rest spot for about 2 years for them. Before Val comes back, picks them up to take them elsewhere. Because his thinking is just, I'll leave them there. Nobody's fighting over Tatooine. Nobody wants Tatooine. I'll just leave them there for till this war is over. The thing is, Val becomes more of a minor thorn in the side of the Sith, namely the CIS. Val doesn't know about the Republic side of the Sith plot. He doesn't know anything. They never told him. They didn't trust him. Why would they? So he only thinks the Sith are in control of the CIS. He doesn't know about the Republic. The thought never occurred to him. So we're trying to make it that each character has one piece of the puzzle, but they don't have the complete piece. So they're operating on very faulty logic. Val, or the former Malignus, is operating with, I'm a Jedi. Well, I'm kind of a lightsider now because I can't really use, I'm no longer with the dark side. Malira starts to teach him a bit of the light, so, he goes from there and says, I'm going to go be a pain in the rear end for the Sith. That is to say, the CIS. I'll just, do whatever I want to screw them over as much as possible. But the Sith see it as, we got much better crap to do than deal with him. On the Republic side, Malira, though, is assigned. She starts to help another Jedi who's... Well, the thing is, around the 1.5 year mark, there's another Jedi assigned to the command, because it's just decided that they need another commander in the region, more for the protection of Onderon. The Jedi finally decide battles are starting to take place near Onderon, so they station a Jedi Knight called Ordnum. Jedi Knight Ordnum. And Ordnum is someone who has a Padawan assigned to him. He doesn't like his Padawan. So he takes his Padawan, who's the best friend of Skyrim, the apprentice of Malira, and dumps his Padawan on Malira. Because he thinks, well, she's a Cathar. I don't really like Cathar. Screw her. But Ordnum's a competent Jedi Knight. He's just, we were thinking, a jerk. We were actually thinking he'd be, in terms of race, we decided to kind of insert the Korugar race from Green Lantern, Sinestro's race. Just to have a red-skinned human in there of sorts. But he doesn't like his Padawan. He's prejudiced against Cathar, so he takes his Padawan that's assigned to him. He did not choose her. Yoda set her up with him, saying, you need a Padawan who's cheerful, friendly, and everyone likes. You're a hard ass. You need someone to teach you to have fun. I'm assigning you this Padawan. But it doesn't work out because he says, oh, okay, that's nice. Dumps her on Duxon with Malira and says, you deal with her. This is a war. I shouldn't have to deal with Padawans. Wars get Padawans killed. You have the job of, protecting, your supply base. You stay there. But we're thinking that they soon intercept some CIS communications and find out this guy's homeworld is en route between a CIS army and Onderon. This guy decides to go in because he's attached to his homeworld. But he's beaten back and Malira has to mount a rescue operation. But this guy's homeworld is bombarded. His people don't face complete annihilation, but most of them do. So this is where this Jedi Knight is massively traumatized. He loses a good chunk of his legion, and his people are almost wiped out by Grievous. And the thing is, he is of course reprimanded and relocated to Coruscant to be benched for a while because he's court-martialed. He was commanded to stay on Onderon and not move an inch without first consulting with the council. And with Malira, he didn't do that. Malira, because she's been behaving for a year and a half, is complimented and told, wow, okay, now we can move you to a different space sector. Now, we're willing to kind of, how do I put it? We're willing to cede an inch and give you an actual mission. And the mission they assign her is, you're going to go capture Dariel Farron, your former master. Because we caught him for a brief time, then he was freed. The CIS managed to free him. We want you to capture him. He might know something of CIS plans, but he will not fight the Jedi. But who better to send against him than his former Padawan learner? But the trouble is, Malira's reluctant. This is her daddy figure. She is like, I don't feel comfortable being dispatched against him. But at this point, the Jedi don't really have anyone else, so they just tell her, well, you're going to do it. Too bad, so sad, go cry to your mama. Except your mama's dead, so go capture daddy. So Malira does, but her master, when confronted by her, basically just, he's like, no, I'm not even going to fire a shot. This is my former Padawan. No. Now, he is in charge of protecting some CIS shipyards, but he says, all right, I'm shutting down this Legion. I'm just going to get into a starship and try to escape. But the thing is, he's intercepted. So he's captured. And the problem is, he surrenders. Now, I'm not trying to paint him as a coward or a weakling. It's just, he signed up to fight the Republic. But fighting the Jedi is something he doesn't like the idea of doing. He's a bit weak-willed on that front, because he's like, I disagree with Yoda and Mace Windu. But if he's handed a sword and told, you're going to murder them, his reaction is one of horror. He sees it as, no, we're still brothers. Like, like, Yoda helped raise me. I can't kill him. And this is my Padawan learner. And we're thinking, because it's his former Padawan, he decides, I don't want to change sides. But I'm willing to, have a conversation. The Jedi naturally sent another Jedi Knight, a Jedi Master actually, with Malira, because they didn't have... Malira's shown herself to be a little disobedient. The Jedi Master sent with her is a Toglutan Jedi Master, whom I at present forget the name of. I'll have to remember for next time. But he sent with her more to... It's because our thinking was, why would they send her off on her own when she's kind of proven herself disobedient in the past?
Sorry, what kind of Jedi Master did you say?
Togorian, that's it. Togorian. You know, like the Togorian pirates?
Togorian. Okay, I'm not familiar with the Togorians.
That's what I was thinking. I said Toglutan, but I meant Togorian. Sorry.
Okay. No, it's okay. I don't think I know of the Togorians.
They're cat-like, they're big, they're muscled, they're badass. I really like them.
Yeah, they don't seem to be in a lot of material. That's pretty cool.
But this guy we were thinking was an intellectual. Like, he's a seer, he's a scholar, and his flaw is that he's into really ancient history. But his interest lies in the history of Marka Ragnos and the Dark Lords of the ancient Sith Empire. But the difference is, Malira, by this time, she's a seeress, but she's uncomfortable with going too far into the future. She's like, you can look into a year in the future, and it's a maybe. It's not a definitive thing. You know what I mean? She's like, the future is fluid, not fixed. That old Jedi teaching. This guy sees it as, the future is fixed, not fluid. So you have two different visions. So he's kind of a different version of her. But he's in charge, because the Jedi are like, he listens, she doesn't. But the thing is, this guy sees it as, well, we have Darial Farron, we have him captured, I was thinking this is near, ironically, Korriban. So, the story of the Clone Wars for Malira started in Korriban, and it ends in the space sector next to it. So it, like George said, it rhymes. But in this situation, she kind of, how do I put it? She's accompanied by someone who has a bit too much of a deep interest in the history of the Sith. But he's notably interested in the history of how Marka Ragnos came to power, and in ancient Sith tools, artifacts, and whatnot. He justifies it by saying, this is how we might fight the Sith. We need to understand their psychology and their history in order to know how to fight them. Malira sees it as, yeah, but that could prove dangerous. You know what I mean? She's like, yeah, I bonded with Malignus to redeem him, but I never tried to delve too deep into the darkness within him. You know what I mean? She fell in love with him, but she's like, I fell in love with the guy who was a good guy underneath it all, the honorable man. I didn't like the darkness. She's like, you're kind of into some creepy stuff. For all of her defiance, she's at her core a bit of a schoolgirl. You know what I mean? She's deep down really, really uncomfortable with ideas of the dark side. So her motivation at this point, as the Jedi Master says, well, we know, the Sith have had command of this area. We got to search the area for hidden bases and whatnot. And there are Sith that allied with Dooku in the area. So we're going to investigate that, and we're going to look into whatever they've got as treasury and whatnot. Malira doesn't feel comfortable, but is obliged to follow orders, because she's on a short leash. So, but Dariel is brought along because this Jedi Master sees us. We have to drag him along because he might know things, and I'm not leaving him alone on a ship for the CIS to attack and take him back or something. He does not leave our eyesight. Dariel does not fight back and is not armed because, he doesn't want to cause trouble. He's a good little boy. But Malira, feeling bad for her master, decides to consult with someone who's kind of slipped nearby, her former, her lover. And she decides she does want to free her master, which that's where we're thinking, she's like, yes, he's a prisoner, but you know what I mean? She's like, treating him like a criminal, it's not right. So she's like, I'm not going to leave, but I'm not on board with bringing him onto a planet where there might be Sith, with him unarmed and in chains. She's like, that's a death sentence. So she kind of lets him go. And this gets her a harsher reprimand, and she's told, when we make it back to Coruscant, you're going to be court-martialed. You're going to, you're going to be kicked out, basically. You're going to follow orders. We're going to keep hunting these Sith, but you're screwed. Malira just agrees. She's like, I don't like it, but she is a firecracker, but she's like, what can I do? But I'm thinking her Padawan tries to help cover for her and say, well, both Padawans, actually, that accompanied her are like, well, we tried to help. We liberated the Jedi Master, Dariel Farron, the traitor. We liberated him. Doesn't work. They're caught in a lie, and they didn't know their master would do this. Malira's basically screwed. She's going to be court-martialed. She's going to be kicked out. That's her fate, if she survives. So that's where she is. Fergus is over, we're thinking of by this time, as the Outer Rim sieges begin, he ends up moving into the Twi'lek portion of the galaxy, towards Ryloth. By this time, Malira's former friend, Millennia Farlin, the Twi'lek, has resigned her senatorship, because she got angry and got impatient as the war progressed with the lack of efforts on the Twi'leks. So she resigned her position as senator, and decided to go back to her homeworld, Rencloth, to go become a freedom fighter again. She just said, screw it. I tried the senator thing, it didn't work, I'm going home. But that's where, I hope that's not too random, she ends up going back to Ryloth and Rencloth to basically just go do what she wants. Because she just, to her mind, the Senate wasn't listening. They just voted more and more emergency powers. She got fed up, she lost her temper, and just said, I quit. But we were thinking before she left, she said, I want a vote of no confidence against the Chancellor. Like what Padme did. Except she loses. She loses that vote. She says, no confidence on Chancellor Palpatine. Screw you. You're not doing your job. Why are the Twi'leks being oppressed by the CIS? She lost. So she basically says, I quit. Goes home. Fergus is dispatched because the Jedi do value Millennia. But Millennia ends up, at that point, basically, she's got a Wookiee bodyguard, which that's about the most interesting thing she's got at the moment. And she's also got the Wookiee's life debt partner, a Mandalorian who had sided with the Republic because he felt, he was one of the Mandos who were on Kamino, but he saw it as, he waited for Yoda to show up because he didn't know anything, because Jango Fett didn't tell him anything. So he ended up fighting for the Republic. But he ended up just getting hired as a bodyguard for a senator, which he thought, it's not the best gig, but it's work. And Mandos were often employed like this, is our thinking. But this Twi'lek decided, I need a Mandalorian's a good fighter to have around. So this Mandalorian happens to be the older brother of Talanis Salazzar. His name is Kev. But the idea with him as a character is, where his younger sister ran off to join Dooku, he stayed behind. But the siblings were in loose contact with each other. He did not approve of her decision. He preferred the Republic because he saw it as the Republic, he just saw it as, I don't have a grudge against the Jedi. I don't care one way or the other. I could fight against them. The Mandalorians always lose. I don't feel like being on the losing side. I want to be on the winning side. But the thing is, the Republic Army didn't really want to employ him as a Mando general or something. So that's how he ended up becoming a senatorial bodyguard. He saw it as in-between job. Saved a Wookiee along the way, got a life debt. He didn't want it. He tried to chase the Wookiee off, but the Wookiee wouldn't listen, because Wookiee. But he decides to agree to this temporary gig because it's either that or basically be jobless. So his mentality is, well, take it for a little bit. But when she says, all right, I quit as a senator, I'm going home, he decides to accompany because this is a good fight. The Mandalorian need to be... the Mandalorians are Saiyans, except minus a Super Saiyan. Good, a fight. Wookiee decides it's the right thing to fight for. So you have this small clutch of characters who go off to Ryloth. We can forget about them for a while. They don't matter anymore. I'm joking. Okay, Kev Salazar will have a purpose, I guess, later on, but not at present. What? Yeah, I know I sound too random and unfocused. It's just the storylines became so decentralized and unconnected from each other. Okay, to get back to Tahlon, the thing with him is he is now with Talanis Salazzar investigating the mystery of who done it, who is Palpatine. And even as he's handed communications between Dooku and a Sith Lord called Darth Sidious, he has his proof that Sidious does exist, because this has been a point of contention for the Jedi since the start of the Clone Wars. And that's because Obi-Wan in Episode 2 was told about a guy called Darth Sidious in control of the Senate. Now, at the same time that Tahlon gets tipped off that, yes, here's some communications by this Mandalorian, she's like, here you go. Obi-Wan and Anakin find Nute Gunray's chair. And this is actual canon, like EU canon. So, Talon's investigation and Obi-Wan and Anakin's investigation into Sidious times about the same time period. So, both groups are investigating from different angles. But Tahlon ends up kind of helping confirm something, because the communications sent to Dooku are traced to Coruscant, not only by Anakin and Obi-Wan, but by Tahlon and Talanis. So that what ends up happening on Coruscant is you have Mace Windu, who then leads an investigation into the works, where Sidious sometimes hangs out. I don't know, he has, concerts there, I don't know. He sometimes works as a DJ.
Just a little side gig.
Yeah, he's got to bring in the credits. Like, that political career ain't going to pay for itself. But, yeah. So, the thing is, though, Tahlon realizes the works. Tunnel. So, we're talking about a guy who has easy, free access to the Senate. But, he's got access, because this Jedi did find out there's a tunnel that leads from the Senate buildings, estates, and apartments, and the actual senatorial location to the works. Mace found that. And this is where Talon's concern becomes about Order 66. Now, on that angle, he's still not sure what it is. But his view is, well, we've got Palpatine who disappeared for a number of years. We have a Senate tunnel to the works where the Sith are, and that's where we're thinking it's around the time of Episode 3 he starts to reach the conclusion The only conclusion, the same one that Mace had, but Mace didn't fully want to admit to it, Palpatine is Darth Sidious. And this is a conclusion the Jedi were reaching. They were terrified of it. Because, like, once you acknowledge the Chancellor is a Sith Lord, well, you have a problem. Because as Chancellor, he represents the Republic. But as Sidious, he's the enemy of the Jedi. So, this is why monarchies are so much better than democracies. I'm joking.
So you have the Jedi Order. What would it look like if they suddenly went in to arrest the Chancellor?
Insert episode 3. But this is where we have the idea.
What were you going to say about monarchy, though?
I was going to joke, like, this is why a monarchy is so much better than a democracy. Because there's no way Sidious could be elected if it's a monarchy, unless it's an elected monarchy. But at that point, I'm going to have to tell Dan to shut up. Elected monarchy.
That's what a president is, right? Pretty much.
I hadn't thought of that, but I guess? Maybe? Presidents have much more power than kings did in the medieval period. I'm not casting judgments, I'm just saying, kings, there's a lot of things they couldn't do, contrary to the popular imagination. There were limits. So many limits, and checks and balances. There's a reason why several kings were put on trial in the 18th century and the 18th century. You had kings put on trial, and honestly, the kings didn't have any idea what to do. Because Parliament...
In what century?
That was in 1648 to 1650. That was England, Charles I. He was executed because he was found guilty of treason. Yes, the King of England was found guilty of treason against England.
That's a weak monarch. That's why.
Yeah, actually, yes. But it was decided they should elect someone with absolute power who wasn't bound by constitution or law or Magna Carta. They decided on a military dictatorship. It didn't go well.
Well, true monarchy is like, I answer to God alone, right?
Well, I answer to God and Parliament.
That's like what do you call that, a constitutional monarchy?
No, well, sort of. Yes and no. Traditional monarchies, you had the 3 estates. So, like, the king wasn't allowed to raise taxes on his own. He couldn't just say, I'm taxing the people. He had to call up the 3 estates who were the representatives of the church, the nobility, and the peasants, and ask them, can I have permission to tax you guys? And they would decide whether they were willing to let him tax them. Weirdly enough, a lot of times they said, okay, because it's good for the country, but we're putting a limit here. Like, you might say, King Louis, we don't appreciate, we don't really like giving up our money and stuff. We're willing to agree on a 3% taxation for 1 year, but you're not allowed up to 4, you're not allowed up to 5, it's 3. And we're going to try to raise the fund of, let's say, £15,000. And the king will say, okay. No, the king's always said, okay. But if he was found trying to slip around them in tax, there were kings who did that. They could have their royal prerogative to tax, even their own land sometimes, in some cases, struck. Like, Parliament would say, you're not allowed, you're on timeout. And the kings would say, oh, darn it, I'm on timeout now. I'm grounded. I guess it's time to go play video games. I'm just kidding. But, no, like, the kings were like, well,
a lot of times it depends on the formally a monarchy, but in the real world, formally, yes, it's a monarch. But in reality, yeah, if it's a monarchy with no power, then it's really not a king.
Although that said, Parliament couldn't make up laws on its own without the king's permission. The king could dissolve Parliament. He could say, no, you know what, you guys aren't doing what I tell you. You're all fired, go home. And they all went home. And then he'd say,
yeah.
But the thing is, here's the thing. They always listened. They always said, okay. But if he said, like, for example, the aristocracy are getting out of control, he would tell the church leaders, or representatives, I should say, and the peasants, listen, I don't like what the nobles are doing. Like the counts and dukes, they're really being nasty to you guys. And they're being kind of jerkish to me. What do you say we team up against them? Yeah, okay.
With the peasants, with the people.
Yeah. Usually the king took the...
The ally of the king is often the people against the nobility, right?
Yeah, that was usually what happened. And the church was usually like, hey, as long as we're not bothered, we're cool. Because people forget the church was often the ones who upheld human rights at the time. So the church was like, you killed on a saint's feast day. Like, please knock it off. Please don't do that. You're not supposed to kill on weekends. That was actually a thing. Don't kill on weekends. It's not cool. Everybody has the day off on weekends. What are you doing?
Yeah, take a break.
And you have the nobility.
Yeah, not on the Sabbath, please.
Yeah, not on Sunday in particular. As the seventh day. Like, knock it off. And you had the nobility. Oh, come on. First it was Sunday, then it was the Sabbath, and now you don't want us killing on Fridays. Like, come on.
Mm-hmm.
When can we go around killing people?
Yeah, now you don't want us to kill peasants. When did that start? We could always kill a serf.
Yeah, it started around the 10th century, and the kings really liked their peasants. They were like, please don't kill my peasants. I like them. They're nice. And the church didn't like it because, well, we're trying to save their souls. How can we save their souls if you murder them before they repent of any sins they might have? Or it's, oh, you killed this peasant. I liked Bob. He always gave his tithes. He was a very sweet, loving family man. Why would you kill Bob? I felt like it. Well, what the hell's wrong with you? You can't kill Bob. You can't kill Chris.
Yeah, I mean, he walked in front of he walked in front of me when he wasn't supposed to. He looked at me funny. He looked at a noble funny, so he's to die.
Yeah.
But their property, so in feudalism, that like a peasant is property, so you wouldn't want to just dispose of property for no reason.
Now, around the end of the 12th century, that stuff's all stopped. You don't have serfs, really, to an extent. Like, you do, but you don't. Like, it's complicated. So, like, the serf has human rights. A few serfs actually said, I'm going to sue you. And the response from the barons and counts was, what? And then they were taken to the king's court, or to the church's court, and the kings basically said, did you actually look at that peasant funny? Well, he's a peasant. Okay, I'm gonna need to give you a strike there. Did you actually insult his mom? Let's say. Well, yeah, because she was a... Yeah, well, you don't tell him that. That seems a little mean. And no cussing in my presence. Just for that, you now owe him money and you owe me money. And you have the noble. What? So the courts really started favoring... Like, the courts sometimes favored nobles, sometimes peasants, usually church. But the church was usually playing nice in medieval times. They were like, we're the guys who have to referee between the king, the nobility, and the peasants. We're going to play referee, guys. You all have to get along. And, like, that's why when people post online, the church was always corrupt. Not exactly. It was complicated. Your local priest in the countryside was usually, like, a farmer as well. So he's like, look, the baron's coming around with his sword in hand. Halt, why are you slaughtering peasants? I felt like it. You're not doing that. Well, who are you to stop me? I have a cross. Now, back to Star Wars. This is about the time when Episode 3 strikes and Order 66. Now, our thinking is, first off, which victim should we start with? Yes, I use the term victim deliberately. Let's start with Malira. I want to kill her off first. The little minx she got with a former Sith. She must die. So, the thing is, she broke into a Sith temple where there was a Sith holdup, slew the Sith, and was about to bust into, his room. Now, the thing is, she couldn't figure out how to get around the security to the room, so she sent the two Padawans up into the air vent to try to come out the other side and open the door for her. That was her thinking. Then she was, you have Order 66 that's initiated. But the thing is, the clones, she only has a few with her, but the clones decide, we're going to need backup. But basically she ends up told, listen, you need backup down there. We've received messages that there's more Sith there than what we originally thought. Can you give us your location so we could send some men in? She says, sure. Says, this is my location within the temple. I'll wait for you guys. So she's like, well, I don't sense any danger on the other side of the room where one of the Sith's offices was. And the two Padawans kind of got lost a little in the air vent. So she just says, okay, I need to consolidate my position. She doesn't clue in. So clones arrive. They say, all right, after you, ma'am. Can you lead us back to that office? She turns around, goes to do it, and they shoot her. So we're thinking, the clones liked her, but they outsmarted her. She never saw it coming. She was a seeress who never saw it coming. What do you think of the irony?
I like it. It's interesting how they don't really see it coming.
No.
They don't really see it coming, the Jedi.
No.
So much for the premonition abilities.
Yeah. But the thing is, her former lover was in the area. Her Padawans are in the air vent. The clones get the idea of flooding the air vent with gas to poison the kids, the two Padawans. But the former Sith comes in.
Have you ever seen the HK-47 from Knights of the Old Republic?
I love HK.
Yeah. Have you ever seen his speech? I think it's from Coach War 2, and you can basically interview him about how to kill a Jedi.
Yeah.
And you have to, it's a BioWare game, so of course you gotta, you have to figure out the right way to, you have to be evil, essentially. You have to get him to open up to you, but he will tell you why it's so hard to kill a Jedi, and a lot of the different methods for killing a Jedi are very ineffective. Because they can sense, like if it's a plot, if it's a highly coordinated effort, that's something that they can easily sense. So almost it's better if it's almost happenstance.
But the weird thing is, when it comes to the clones, the Jedi didn't see it coming. Because they couldn't sense clones' intentions.
Do you think that's because the clones don't really know, they're responsive, like they're only reacting to a specific order, so it's not in the back of their head like, I gotta betray them at some point. I'm kind of keeping that to myself, though.
Yeah.
They're not even aware of the betrayal.
No, because it's a genetic thing. The minute the order activates, it's like they're possessed by a demon. They have to kill the Jedi by any means necessary. But they know the Jedi's exact weak points and strengths and weaknesses and whatnot and how to do it. But the problem is, and
they don't have that in their they're not like, in Dune there's their way that they have some really good writing where the main character can sense that man is a killer, and I can just sense it. And you wouldn't, they just know that I can just see it. Yeah. I can just sense that in them, that man is a killer. The way they move, the way they act.
Now, the only thing is, we were thinking, the thing with Valerian is that Val is the one who comes in, kills some of the clones in the temple, and saves the two Padawans. But he does it with the help of Darial Farron, the Treno-Shan Jedi Master of Malira. Because, she handed Darial to her lover. But her lover and her master pretty much... Basically, they feared that the Sith would be able to kill her. So they came back. They were more afraid for her. But the thing is, they stumble upon things. As for the Jedi who's a seer who accompanied Malira, this is where we're thinking he's different. He senses it coming. Because there is one group of people who could see it coming. Darksiders. He had turned. But our idea was, just as the massacres are happening throughout the galaxy, he sensed it, and this caused him to turn to the dark side. This made him fall. And he comes under the belief that the Jedi had to fall for him to achieve greater greatness. Because the only way to fight the Sith is by beating them at their own game, by conquering them using the dark side. It's one of those delusions some Sith do develop when they're starting on their journey. And there were Sith who could sense what was going to happen a bit before it happened. So but he had made sure to relocate himself into a different part of the temple. So he disappears into the shadows, and the characters kind of forget about him. The Padawans just are freaking out. Although by then they're 17 years old. They're freaking out. Valerian's not in his right frame of mind. So this group basically flee to the Sith's hidden hangar and flee via a CIS ship, using a mixture of Republic signals and whatnot. The clones decide to bombard the planet, just to make damn sure they get everyone. Which they don't. But this is where I'm thinking, Palpatine's later annoyed because there are Sith artifacts on that planet, and it's like, you bombarded the damn planet to kill a couple of Jedi. Yes, well, we killed Malira, we're pretty sure of that. We meant for our guys to gas out the Padawans, but then we lost contact with our clones on the planet. So my solution was to bombard the planet and just firebomb the whole damn thing, and destroy every Sith temple on the planet. And,
it's one way to do it.
Yeah, and we're thinking that was craft. Like, he's just always like that. He's like, well, I just say we firebomb the place. We kill everyone. But the problem is, you have Palpatine just rubbing his temple and going, yes, but what about my Sith artifacts? Like I care. Like, my job is just to firebomb the place. Find me an artifact or 5. So the clones then have to go check out the rebel. Palpatine's not impressed with them. They're basically just stuck on garbage duty. Hey, they made a mess. But that's
was he interested in? He was interested in these artifacts back then, or it seems like when he gets older, he stops caring about.
Yeah, I think he did.
That
stop
type
caring.
of thing, or does he continue on caring about Sith artifacts?
I don't think he keeps caring. I think he does stop caring, like you said, Chris. That's a good point.
Because eventually we know that...
Vader took more of an interest.
Exactly.
Vader was Jarek.
Vader was the one running the show.
So Vader, I'm actually... That's something that I was just going to ask. So Vader, he takes an interest in Sith artifacts too at some point?
Yeah. About 3 to 4 years after Episode 3.
Okay.
He takes Initially, he doesn't. But when Palpatine switches his favor to Ferris Olin, his rival, Silly's Padawan and Obi-Wan's favorite besides Anakin, the rivalry sparks up so that the trouble is Palpatine teaches special Sith techniques only to Ferris that he didn't teach to Vader. And Vader decides to compensate by looking into Sith holocrons and artifacts. So you have a arms race between the Sith.
The perception is that he seems like a brute at times.
Vader's smart
with how he uses the Force. Not that he's not smart. He knows people and he knows tactics and stuff, but not even just that. We know that I know he's smart, but I'm just saying, like, I haven't seen a lot of that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the perception. And I actually haven't. I could see that within the character that he would want to do that, but I just haven't seen it.
Okay. Well, it's just there's some comics where he has a lot of holocrons on Vajun, his throne world.
That's cool. I would like to read that.
But the thing is, as for Fergus, we decided that with Fergus, he would end up on Ryloth, but he ends up receiving a message from his sister on basically his...
Sorry, one thing I had thought of before we move off the artifacts thing, sorry, but you mentioned Duxon, and that was also a place of
dark side
a lot
energy.
of Sith
Yeah.
dark side energy, and I was wondering if that would come into play at all.
No, we didn't actually bring it in because the thing is, Malira was not interested in that or curious. But we were thinking Ordnum, the Jedi Knight she had teamed up with, took a bit of an interest. And did a bit of a survey.
Yeah, and it's like, even if you're not interested, though, the dark side energy is going to make, it is going to come into contact with anyone that's Force sensitive, I'd imagine.
Yeah, but there are some who, not so much, who are very careful. Our point was to show Malira's despite her impulsiveness and her love for Val, and her kind of choosing love every time, like the love for her father figure, the love for her Padawans, the love for her sons, the love for her lover, she doesn't actually ever let herself get carried away. You know what I mean? She's like, oh, I have to be careful. I lose control of myself for a single second. Oh my gosh, what will happen to me? So she's very self-restrained, I guess would be the term. With that sort of
Yeah,
thing.
that certainly helps.
Yeah. But the thing is, we were thinking, the Jedi have the perception she doesn't have enough self-restraint. But she herself has the attitude, well, like I can't go chasing around the jungle for dark side artifacts. That scares me. Like, she's actively scared of the dark side. So she's like, I'm not
going on a planet like that that's filled with the dark side. If you're a Jedi, overthinking things can screw you over and turn you to the dark side.
Yeah, and that's where we had thought she'd kind of develop a long-distance friendship of sorts with Mace Windu, who checks in on the supply base every once in a while because it is an important supply base. So there's that, and there's also her bond with the two Padawan learners that she's babysitting. So she takes more of an interest in her Padawans and teaching them in the latter half there. Hope we're consistent there. Fergus, for his part, gets a message from his sister.
I do have to wrap up pretty soon, just to let you guys know.
Yeah, we're just wrapping up.
Whenever there's a good point to wrap up this one, we can do that, but don't want to cut off prematurely.
No problem. Fergus is on Ryloth, gets a message on basically his answering machine saying, well, from his sister who was grieving for the loss of Quinn's, and she wants to talk to him. He says, yeah, okay. He's like, I'm not going to bother with the answering machine right now. I'm going to deal with that after I'm back from Ryloth, because it's on the ship. So he's like, yeah, whatever. But along the way, we decide that, he dispatches his Padawan into the desert to hunt down any CIS officers who fled that way, while he takes care with wrapping up the city. Basically, you scout out the plan and whatnot. His Padawan's accompanied by 2 clones, and the thing is, Order 66 comes in. With the Padawan, he ends up, they're pretty much in a cave and whatnot. They try to attack him. A Rancor is set off, and the Padawan very nearly dies, and ends up in the middle of the Dune Sea on Ryloth, fleeing from a freaking Rancor. So he saved as much by luck as by stupidity on his own part. So Bob's basically just, they're near a cave because they were scouting the area. Clones nearly killed him when he wasn't noticing, and one of them missed a shot. And they woke up at an angry Rancor, which killed the 2 clones and chased. He fled into the desert. His speeder bike broken because the clones had sabotaged it. They didn't want him escaping. So he doesn't have a speeder bike, and he's in the middle of the desert. Meanwhile, his master, in the middle of the city, saves a young girl from some droids from being slain. Comforts her, picks up his lightsaber, goes to charge forward. Then he has a sense of deja vu, and the clones turn on him and shoot him down, killing him.
Dang.
The girl in front of this little kid. Then they turn and kill the little girl he just saved. And yeah, so that's how Fergus meets his end.
Poor Fergus.
Yeah. But we were thinking the worst part would be his last thoughts were, my sister might want to make peace. I've got a Padawan. I've been living with this dread for like 3 years. I think I'm about ready to make peace. I think I'd like to live. He's like, I think I'm ready. I'm ready to move on in life. Bang! Thump! They keep firing. But
wow. Yeah.
Where his last thought would just be, what? Like, where he didn't see it coming. He's like, done. They're not going to be trusted. And Tahlon soon, he arrives sometime before Order 66 and arrives just alongside his Mandalorian friend, just as Mace is cast out of the Chancellor's office. And this is where we'll end, but the idea is I will end with one thing I did not like from the EU was how many times do people get thrown out of the Jedi Temple's top building or the Senate's top building or jump out and live? Like Xanatos Qui-Gon Jinn. So we decided Mace would live because he's crashing through the Senate sky. We're thinking this is where he'd be rescued on a speeder by young Kenobi. But we got to bear in mind, Mace is without an arm. One could say he's an unarmed, or is it a disarmed man?
He's been disarmed.
Yeah.
He needs a hand in a few things.
But he's also going to be in extreme medical... he's going to be needing to go to the ER.
So is that like a nice little one-liner Obi-Wan can do? Hey, you need a hand? Thought you might need a hand?
Yeah, we were thinking that'd probably be the line dished out by him. Then you'd have
Perfect.
Talanis just slapping him on the back of the head saying, just pilot! And you have him. Everyone's a critic.
So so in the fight with Palpatine, Mace, you're saying that Obi-Wan's going to rescue Mace?
The problem is, I don't believe Mace could have died that way because it's just, he would have crashed onto a ship. There's no way he's going to hit the bottom because of how Coruscant is. I've actually never seen a character in the expanded universe actually get thrown out like that and land at the bottom. But he's
also like, yeah, I know what you mean.
He's still screaming as he's flying through the air. But
yes,
I'm a cynic. I'm of the opinion Mace Windu could not change anything at that point. Like him surviving or living or dying doesn't change anything. So
why?
It's because he's lost his main hand. His health is going to be broken for a bit because he came near to death. But the other thing is, the Jedi will be...
I mean, it was a powerful enough lightning that it sent him flying, like, out of the window and however many yards away. So, and that's pretty powerful because I'm just thinking, like, anytime I've seen Force lightning used, the person didn't get, like, blasted across the planet. So it would have left a mark.
That's what we were thinking. We're thinking Tahlon ends up having to rush him to a medical bay. But this is where Tahlon, being someone who's scrounged on the, I don't want to say darker side, but the undercity, you know what I mean? The lower city, the lower dregs of society, basically takes him to a temporary med bay in the lower parts of the city. But then they have to move Mace off planet. So Tahlon is not participating in episode 3 because he's basically moving Mace off planet and having to do so very secretively. Palpatine is not keeping track of him because lost track of him. And at this point, Palpatine's got a coup d'etat to throw on, to launch. He's got to destroy the Jedi. He's got to, take over the Senate, have a dinner party. Well, no, I should say a birthday party. So, his schedule's overbooked. As for Vader, there's the whole destroy the Jedi, then destroy the CIS. So, this is where Tahlon does not know who Vader is, but he's more focused on keep Mace alive. Sith have taken over the galaxy. Mace will have the answers, but Mace will not. And it's going to take him a long, long time to recover health-wise. But he's going to be in a Bacta tank for months, which is not good. So that's where we're thinking that plot goes.
Interesting.
We'll get into the rest next time.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think this has gone on long enough and it's time to end.
Good part 3. Definitely a good part 3. Yeah, we covered a lot. You guys covered a lot, so got all the way up to the end of Revenge of the Sith.
Yep, which will occur the same way. We don't change anything. I know it seems like everything we've done is pretty pointless. Like, we introduce all these characters, get rid of a bunch, and whatnot. But the idea is to more pave the way for background characters to what's going to happen next.
Well, some of them, at this point, you've already wrapped up a lot of those background characters. They're done. But they have had a complete character arc. A lot of those people, they've just wrapped up theirs. How many people do we have left?
We have Mikran. We have Commander Hale of the 339th Legion and his Legion, the Rogue Legion. We have the 2 Padawans and Tahlon and Talanis, and I think that's about it. But we'll have to wrap up Tahlon and Talanis.
Okay, we'll see what happens with these ones. We'll see if they live or die, if they survive this plot. I'm thinking, based on what you've said, they may not have long for this world.
No. Dun, dun,
I
dun.
sense much sense. Dun, dun, dun. Well, with that, I think maybe we'll wrap up. Thanks a lot, guys, for giving part 3 of the Kenobi timeline. Yeah, you guys are just so incredibly knowledgeable about the Star Wars universe that it really does amaze me. And I especially want to say, I don't know, it's like there's so much I didn't know because of the expanded universe is so big, and you huge. Guys, I feel there's like would maybe another project. Not a project, but you've given a good character list. I would be interested to see some of your most highly influenced, what works are you most highly influenced by in terms of the canon? In Star Wars specifically. Yeah. In
Jedi
Star
Knight
Wars,
series.
I think. Okay.
And KOTOR.
Yeah, I think that. Okay. That would be something. I feel like there's more to it than that for you. Maybe not, but yeah, that's something that I've been like, how can I keep up with this? Because I'm so much into the different side of canon. Although KOTOR, I do know that side pretty well.
There's also Jedi Apprentice by Jude Watson. The 6 novelizations of the 6 movies by George Lucas. And there's The Last of the Jedi book series with Ferris Olin. And there's also the various Clone Wars novels. And The Children of the Jedi novel. I really like that one. The one with Callista Ming and Luke. And I guess the Leia and Han novels. There's a duology about those 2. I like those ones. So there's the old video games, and there's all those books. So that's what kind of influenced us. And yeah, so the idea is basically to uphold that as canon, and our moving parts are to operate in the background and more serve as explanations for this plot hole here or that plot hole there, and maneuver around it and try to just not replace the canon, but kind of bolster it. You know what I mean? Like an extra column.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm going to be honest. We're kind of horrified by the notion of replacement, because George and a lot of the other writers created this great canon, which I feel is a lot better than what we've created, so we have to add and bolster. Never subtract. We're not allowed to subtract. We're not allowed to replace, for the most part. That's our mentality. So,
but there's also they were less. They didn't take it. They weren't so careful with the canon back in the day as they.
Yes.
Not saying not.
No,
not
you're
with
right. You're right.
It's just like for instance, a video game would not, like, they had levels of canon. There was one of the early episodes that we did on this podcast before I even joined, was that, like, if it happened in a video game, it was less canon than like a book, and a book was like more canon than,
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
a comic book, but then a movie is like the top canon. Like, of course, nothing would ever. You have to take the movies the most seriously. But if it just happened in like a Lego Star Wars, like maybe you don't have to take that super seriously. You know what I'm saying?
Star Wars.
Sorry, you have to take Lego Star Wars super seriously. Everything that happens in that is canon.
Yeah, like.
But like, if I think that they claim. I think that they in the Disney since the Disney acquisition, they would claim that like everything is canon since they're starting from scratch. Even a video game is just as canon as anything else.
We have the attitude because we grew up Kyle Katarn fans. The Jedi Knight.
But it doesn't matter at the end of the day. You can feel whatever is legitimate. I just want to make that clear.
Yeah, our mentality was the movies, then the video games, then the comics, then the books. But we love the
Interesting.
Books.
Yeah,
that was our kind of pecking order, and we were like, okay, we gotta work with what we're given here, and we gotta make sure we add and never subtract. But we spent years bickering and trying to figure out, and like, there's still lots of stuff we don't even know. Anyways, we gotta get going.
Yeah, same here. But thanks, guys, again for joining. I will tell everyone to go visit your Substack, which I should have mentioned earlier in the podcast. But the Brothers Krynn on Substack, talking about Star Wars, of course, but also many other fantasy worlds, especially, particularly Lord of the Rings. I know you guys are covering the Gambit. Absolutely go check them out if you're fans of fantasy. And even sci-fi, they write about like Dragon Ball Z and different other properties over there too. So it's great. I'm always reading your guys' stuff, and so you all should too. But yeah, with that, everyone have a great day, and may the Force be with you.
May the Schwartz be with you all.